Your Excellencies, I kindly request you please to regain your seats so we can start our meeting today. Excelencias, distinguidos representantes, señoras y señores, tengo el honor de darles la bienvenida a esta conmemoración del 25º aniversario de la adopción del Estatuto de Roma de la Corte Penal Internacional en nombre de la Asamblea de los Estados Partes. Antes de proceder, los invito a ponerse de pie y observar un minuto de silencio dedicado a la oración o a la meditación por las víctimas de atrocidades en todo el mundo. Distinguidos representantes, en la noche del 17 de julio de 1998, los Estados realizaron, contra todos los pronósticos, el sueño de crear la primera Corte Penal Internacional permanente. Hoy tenemos la oportunidad de participar de una conmemoración de este logro histórico y de una reflexión sobre su futuro, con la presencia de una lista estelar de oradores de estados, del mundo académico y de la sociedad civil. Es muy apropiado que estemos reunidos para esta importante ocasión en las Naciones Unidas, bajo cuyos auspicios se negoció el Estatuto de Roma y que han seguido brindando un apoyo esencial a la Corte desde su creación. Al inicio de este acto, invito a tomar la palabra al señor Miguel de Serpa Suárez, secretario general adjunto de Asuntos Jurídicos y asesor jurídico de las Naciones Unidas, y además gran amigo de la Corte y punto focal de sus relaciones con las Naciones Unidas. Señor Serpa Suárez, tiene la palabra.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we commemorate the 25th anniversary of the adoption of the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. I'm honored to be celebrating this milestone with you and to deliver these remarks on behalf of the Secretary General. On this day, a quarter of a century after the signature of its founding instrument, the International Criminal Court is undeniably the central institution of the international criminal justice system. The Court's goals of ending impunity and promoting accountability are closely aligned with the work of the United Nations. Both the Court and the United Nations seek to ensure that the rule of law prevails. While our mandates are independent, we work together towards a common vision. That vision is based on a shared belief that justice is a goal in its own right and essential for international peace, security, and protection of human rights. Ladies and gentlemen, the International Criminal Court has received, since its very inception, the strongest support of the United Nations, a support that the United Nations continues to provide to the Court in its daily activities. As the Court has steadily increased its workload over the years, so has the cooperation between our institutions. Indeed, as the focal point within the organization for cooperation with the Court, I see firsthand the full extent of the support coming from all avenues of the United Nations system, both at headquarters and field levels. The extent of the requested cooperation from the Court has expanded, not only in terms of volume, but also in terms of its nature and geographical scope, and it now encompasses all phases of the Court's proceedings. As you will readily appreciate, our cooperation with the Court usually takes place in a confidential and discreet but efficient manner, and mostly outside the public limelight. The occasion like today gives me a great honor to reaffirm the commitment of the United Nations to cooperate fully with the Court. With our relationship agreement as a solid foundation, the International Criminal Court has been able to count on the full and unwavering support of the United Nations until today, and will continue to do so in the years to come. Ladies and gentlemen, the adoption of the Rome Statute 25 years ago was a promising historic moment near the end of the last century marked by atrocities and unspeakable humanity. It was then and continues to be today a beacon of hope for the international community as serious violations of international law continue and vast accountability gaps persist. Over 75 years ago, in his opening remarks before the Nuremberg Tribunal, Justice Robert Jackson called, I quote, for juridical action to put the forces of international law, its precepts, its prohibitions, and most of all, its sanctions on the side of peace. In today's complex and volatile world, the international community turns to the International Criminal Court with the same calling. We have seen all around the world that when atrocities are being committed, victims and civil society place their hopes in the court as a force for upholding human dignity and ensuring accountability. If we are to maintain international peace and protect humanity, the most serious crimes of international concern must not go unpunished. For only when the perpetrators of those crimes are investigated and prosecuted can there be any hope that future crimes will be prevented and peace preserved. I thank all of you here today, officials of the court and representatives of its member states, for your invaluable work contributing to this common objective of humanity. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. And now, ahora invito a tomar la palabra a la señora María Tripodi, subsecretaria de Estado de Asuntos Exteriores y Cooperación Internacional, distinguida representante de Italia, Estado anfitrión de la Conferencia Diplomática de la Corte Penal Internacional.
Grazie, Presidente Fernandez de Gourmedi, Sottosegretario Generale de Serpa Soares, Presidente Ofmansky, ambasciatori, distinti delegati. Sono particolarmente lieta di rappresentare l'Italia nel 25° anniversario della firma dello Statuto di Roma, istitutivo della Corte Penale Internazionale. Mi congratulo con la Presidenza dell'Assemblea degli Stati parte per l'organizzazione. Questo anniversario reca un significato speciale per il nostro Paese, che fu protagonista di un impegno politico, diplomatico e giuridico determinante per l'adozione dello Statuto. Il 17 luglio 1998 si posero le basi per un cambio di paradigma per il sistema di giustizia penale internazionale. Fu infatti creato il primo Tribunale Penale Internazionale a carattere permanente e universale, incaricato di perseguire in tutto il mondo i responsabili dei crimini considerati più gravi e odiosi dalla comunità internazionale. Lo Statuto di Roma è quindi una pietra miliare nella lotta globale all'impunità. Da allora chiunque si macchi di crimini internazionali sa bene che presto o tardi potrà essere chiamato a rendere conto delle proprie azioni davanti alla Corte. Di riflesso, tale prospettiva dà speranza alle vittime, la cui voce è e deve continuare a essere ascoltata nei procedimenti dinanzi alla Corte, grazie anche all'azione del fondo fiduciario, cui anche l'Italia contribuisce. Alla base dell'istituzione della Corte vi era anche l'idea che, assicurando giustizia per le vittime e perseguendo i responsabili dei crimini più atroci, si possano costruire le condizioni per una pace sostenibile. Nel contempo, l'impegno per la giustizia penale internazionale costituisce uno strumento di prevenzione di ulteriori crimini, come ricorda il preambolo dello Statuto. Signora Presidente, il successo della Corte dipende anche dal sostegno e dalla cooperazione degli Stati parte. L'Italia continuerà, come ha sempre fatto, a fornire il proprio contributo, sia politicamente che in termini di risorse, nel pieno rispetto dell'indipendenza e dell'imparzialità della Corte, nonché del principio di complementarietà. Ribadiamo inoltre l'esigenza di continuare a difendere la Corte da ogni tentativo volto a delegittimarla. Tra le sfide che la Corte è chiamata ad affrontare, desidero citare in questa sede il tema dell'universalità. I 123 Stati parte dello Statuto, appartenenti a tutte le aree del mondo, rappresentano certamente un numero elevato. Ciò nonostante, circa un terzo degli Stati membri delle Nazioni Unite non ha ancora ratificato lo Statuto di Roma. L'Italia auspica quindi che, grazie anche a eventi come quello odierno, il processo di universalizzazione possa trovare nuovo slancio. Per concludere, possiamo senza dubbio affermare che a 25 anni dopo la firma dello Statuto di Roma, la Corte costituisce un'istituzione indispensabile, oltre che un pilastro dell'ordine internazionale basato sulle regole. Lo dimostra l'impegno per accertare e perseguire le violazioni del diritto internazionale umanitario commesse a seguito della criminosa aggressione russa all'Ucraina. Il sostegno alla Corte risponde quindi non solo a una profonda esigenza morale, ma riflette anche l'interesse condiviso di salvaguardare quei pilastri istituzionali e giuridici sui quali deve fondarsi la civile convivenza fra gli Stati. Vi ringrazio.
Muchas gracias, señora Tripodi. Y ahora invito al señor presidente de la Corte Penal Internacional, juez Piotr Hofmansky. Señor presidente.
Madam President, of the Assembly of State Parties. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, at the outset, I would like to pay tribute to all the diplomats, members, and civil society, and others who made the adoption of the Rome Statute possible 20 years ago. That historic moment came at the end of the century that saw millions of people fall victims to unimaginable atrocities. And most of the time, the perpetrators went unpunished. Accepting that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. The drafters of the Rome Statutes aim to eliminate impunity by providing for a system whereby eventual accountability would be secured collectively by the international community. The vision of the Rome Statute, therefore, was a world governed by the rule of law and tied together by common bonds. The creation of the ICC was indeed, as Kofi Annan remarked, the cause for all humanity. My colleagues and I are privileged to serve that cause at the International Criminal Court. In all our work, we seek to serve those who need justice the most, the victims. And I am immensely proud of how the ICC has transformed the Rome Statute's victim-centered concept of justice into reality by enabling the meaningful participation of victims in the proceedings and delivering reparations in close partnership with the Trust Fund for Victims. The last 2 decades have seen the ICC's work expand dramatically. The situations before the court concerned close to 20 countries on 4 continents. Cases have been brought against more than 50 suspects or accused. The court's current workload requires the fullest cooperation of the state parties, and that our mandate under the Rome Statutes can be effectively and continuously advanced. Yet, at the same time, the court must also maintain a healthy distance to states and other political actors, as its work fundamentally rests on the cornerstone of independence and impartiality. The court must also meticulously uphold the equality of arms between the prosecution and the defense. Without the fairness of proceedings, there can be no real justice. Ladies and gentlemen, before I conclude, let me leave you with my hopes for the future. My hope is that one day the ICC will no longer need advocacy or political support to achieve its goals or pursue or states for them to fulfill their obligations. My hope is that one day the ICC will be fully respected as an independent judicial organ of the international community in the same way that courts are respected in national systems governed by the rule of law. My hope is that one day the ICC is left to do its work free of any attempts of external interference, and that its decisions are consistently complied with around the world. And finally, I hope that one day the Rome Statute reaches universal ratification. Of course, that day is still very far in the future until it comes, and the vision of the Rome Statute fully becomes a reality. Our work will not stop. Thank you for your attention.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente, y muchas gracias por brindarnos una visión general del estado actual de la institución y de sus desafíos futuros. Efectivamente, mucho se ha logrado desde el 17 de julio de 1998, Los invito a ver un video que nos llevará brevemente a través de 25 años de vida de la Corte.
"25 years ago, countries worldwide adopted the Rome Statute, a treaty aiming to bring to justice perpetrators of the most serious crimes of concern to the international community as a whole, and to help prevent such crimes.
Adopté.
The Rome Statute entered into force in 2002, establishing the world's first permanent international criminal court, with jurisdiction over genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. The dream of global justice was being put into practice in a court of law. At the Rome Statute's first review conference in Kampala in 2010, countries adopted important amendments on the definition and jurisdiction related to crimes of aggression. Guided by the principles of the Rome Statute set out 25 years ago, today the ICC conducts fair trials, upholds defendants' rights, protects witnesses, and ensures victims' voices are heard. ICC cases have addressed crimes including using child soldiers, murder, rape, attacks on civilians, attacks on cultural heritage, and more. In cases ending in conviction, judges ordered reparations for victims. To date, the court has had 17 investigations launched across 4 continents, 53 defendants in over 30 cases, over 2,500 hearings, 23 languages used inside the courtroom, 10,900 victims who participated in court proceedings, 2,500 victims who received court-ordered reparations, and over 130,000 survivors supported by the Trust Fund for Victims programs. With support from over 120 states parties, the Rome Statute system is making justice happen, helping rebuild people's lives, and forging a path to stability and lasting peace. Together, we can build a more just world.
Estoy segura que el video ha traído muchos recuerdos a quienes tuvieron el privilegio de participar en el proceso de creación de la Corte. Canadá lideró este proceso de manera significativa. Coordinaron el grupo de estados afines que promovieron la Corte en el camino que nos condujo a Roma, y el embajador Philip Kirsch presidió las negociaciones en la conferencia diplomática. Hoy nos honra la presencia de la persona que fue fundamental para asegurar este liderazgo en esos momentos históricos desde su cargo de ministro de Relaciones Exteriores de Canadá. Invito al señor Lloyd Axworthy a tomar la palabra. Tiene la palabra.
Madam President, distinguished members of the Court and the United Nations, members of the Assembly of First States, and friends, guests, relatives, and all others who have joined us today to really engage in both celebration but also in stock-taking. There was a German philosopher, I can't remember his name, who said you have to look back to understand the present. And I think that this is a rare opportunity to begin to think about how did the court happen? Who were its driving forces? And what relevance does that have in the world we live in today? I'm here basically, and I appreciate the opportunity to return to these hallowed grounds. It's been a long time since I've spoken at the UN. by way of disclosure, I say I have other important duties. I've just been appointed as the assistant coach to my granddaughter's soccer team. And I want you to know I have to be back in Ottawa by 5 o'clock tomorrow afternoon to meet my requirement. But I want to use the time I have to say something about three people, beginning with Kofi Annan, who was Secretary General at the time, and certainly during the discourse and activities that we were engaged in, beginning with the treaty on the ban of anti-personal landmines, Secretary General Kofi Annan was not only an inspiration, he was an incredibly effective implementer. He knew how to make the system work, and I think that was a great tribute. I also want to pay tribute to someone who you'll hear from eventually, Bill Pace, who headed up the major coalition of civil society. Because one of the most important and I think groundbreaking efforts in the establishment of the court was a rare partnership, not the consulting partnership, not just secondary, but a full active partnership between like-minded governments, members of the United Nations institutions, and civil society. And in the drafting and the implementation and in the politics of getting it agreed to by 102 countries, I think Bill and his coalition were instrumental. And in saying that, I also want to talk about his partner, Philip Kirsch, who's not here today, but of which we take great pride as Canadians, not only as the head of the negotiating committee, but also as the architect around which the court fit a larger agenda, a larger understanding of the way the world should work. We call that a human security concept, protection of people. And as you know, the old story is that the narrative of politics is not about nation states, it's about the people within them. And I think the concept that Philip brought to that, and when I asked him, when Bill Pace came to talk to me, to suggest that maybe Canada could become active as it was in the landmines campaign, I asked Philip for his judgment. He says, the process needs a booster shot. And I think that from that we were able to engage in a very large coalition of countries around the world. And I'm not trying to be provocative, but remember that this is a tribute to the ability of ordinary, small, medium-sized members of the Assembly. It didn't happen by the P5. In fact, it happened in spite of the P5, to be very blunt and honest about it. Now, I think that is one of the challenges when we talk about universalism that still has to be overcome. And that may be part of the consideration of state parties about how to mobilize that same kind of broad-based political arrangement that was there. Because that partnership, I think, to me, is the core constituency on which the court resides and continues to do. I know, sir, that we want to have an independent court, but to have an independent court, you have to have a political arrangement, system, support that enables it to have that independence. It doesn't happen by simply wishing it to be so. It's a hard, grinding effort. And so I really want to use this short time to say that the court has become one of the central institutions of our system of order. And it's been battered and bruised by so many other kinds of comments. But if there's ever been a time in which the need of a court, the imperative for that institution to provide collective, multi-engaged engagement in the protection of people, it's now. The aggressions in Ukraine, the willful civil slaughter in places like Sudan, increasingly the threats that we have by climate, and those who are pushing it and sort of using false arguments to defend it when we are maybe at a tipping point. This is a moment where I think the court, in its inception and in its origin and genesis, is a model. And I would hope as members of the state parties, as you come together to convene, you begin to see how that particular pathway of partnership, of a commitment to a human security agenda and a commitment to making sure that the protection of people is still at the core of our international order. If that's the case, as I said at the opening session of the Rome Statute, to have a court, you have to have a court worth having. I believe that it's now a court increasingly showing just how important it has to be. But I think for future generations, it needs to do more. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias, señor Auxworthy. Y la adopción del Estatuto de Roma fue efectivamente, como él bien lo señaló, el resultado de una asociación estrecha y eficaz entre los Estados y una coalición por la Corte Penal Internacional, una organización que amparaba miles de organizaciones no gubernamentales. La coalición desempeñó un papel clave en el periodo previo a la Conferencia Diplomática de Roma y ha seguido apoyando a la Corte desde entonces. Es para mí un gran placer invitar al señor William Pace, el convocante de esta coalición durante más de un cuarto de siglo. Señor Pace, tiene la palabra.
Well, thank you very much. As with Lloyd, it's the first time I've been back into the UN in a while, and it's wonderful to be in this room, which was so crucial in the drafting, getting the Law Commission to agree to prepare a draft, and then to proceed in the Sixth Committee and beyond with that draft. Anyway, I'm very honored to be here. I'm honored to represent the global civil society, and now as a member of the Coalition for the International Criminal Court, I'm honored to be with distinguished leaders, current and former foreign ministers, including Lloyd Auxworthy, and also President Silvia Fernandez de Gramande, who attended the first informative meeting of the Coalition as an officer of the Sixth Committee in February of 1995. And honored to be with and able to see many who have participated in Rome in the ratification process and all the developments in the years since. I cannot begin without expressing my deepest concerns that 25 years after the Rome Statute adoption, our world is confronted by ever greater dangers and threats, from war, aggression, climate change, racism, human rights discrimination, refugees, ecological genocide, threats of nuclear catastrophe. The importance of strengthening the international humanitarian legal order and the vital need for a stronger, more representative, more democratic, and effective United Nations and United Nations system cannot be more essential. And these dangers all underlie the importance of our commemoration of the 21st anniversary of the adoption of the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. The adoption of the Rome Statute on July 17, 1998, and the extraordinarily rapid ratification by 100+ nations reflected, in retrospect, after the end of the Cold War, the tragic closing of a golden decade of historic achievements of the rule of law and the advancement of UN Charter goals and institutions. The Rome Statute process represented one of the UN's greatest partnerships between a group of nearly 100 progressive, like-minded governments from all UN regions, working with a coalition of 800 global civil society organizations for a strong an independent international criminal court. The process is documented in the introduction of the Rome report of the ICC, which a copy is on the table over there, which I hope will be included in the presentations of this commemoration by the Assembly Secretariat. The process included the progressive support of the European Union, the African Union, the Organization of American States, and was initiated by Prime Minister A.N.R. Robinson and the CARICOM, Caribbean countries, and included the support of small island nations throughout the world and the crucial leadership, as Lloyd said, of the Secretary General of the Office of Legal Affairs and of the UN General Assembly. And it did overcome fierce opposition of some of the most powerful nations' governments. Going forward, the Assembly of the State Parties must significantly advance complementarity and consider strengthening the provisions on the crime of aggression and crimes against humanity, including considering adding ecocide, and the increasing danger of nuclear war and other humanitarian threats of the horrific potential of generative artificial intelligence. But today is a commemoration of the historic ability of governments and civil society to address and to overcome such global challenges. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much, Bill. El estatuto introdujo además disposiciones, en 1998 introdujo disposiciones para la participación y reparación de las víctimas, por primera vez, las cuales ahora son parte integral de la justicia penal internacional. Tenemos el honor de contar con la presencia de la señora Minú Tavares Mirabal, presidenta del Consejo Directivo del Fondo Fiduciario para las Víctimas. Tiene la palabra, señora Tavares Mirabal.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta Silvia Fernández, sus excelencias. A 25 años de aquel gran momento histórico, tengo el honor de invitarles a una reflexión sobre la relevancia, el impacto y las tareas pendientes para lograr las aspiraciones del Estatuto de Roma sobre las víctimas. Hago esta invitación a nombre del Consejo de Dirección del Fondo para las Víctimas, establecido por mandato del Estatuto de Roma. Como lo recordarán muchos de ustedes que participaron en las negociaciones, el texto inicial del Estatuto no contenía disposiciones para las víctimas. Fue la movilización de la sociedad civil con insumos de expertos y sus argumentaciones lo que gestionó y finalmente logró los consensos que conocemos. Una Corte Penal Internacional con una orientación restaurativa que rechaza la pena de muerte y asegura participación de víctimas y su protección a lo largo del proceso judicial. Con ello se coadyuva a que el proceso de justicia no solo cumpla la importante tarea de asignar responsabilidades, pero que pueda también tener en sí mismo un efecto restaurativo. En 25 años, miles de víctimas han participado en el proceso judicial. La diseminación e interacción con las comunidades afectadas que realiza la Secretaría de la Corte, organizaciones de la sociedad y periodistas que monitorean y diseminan información sobre los procesos acrecienta el impacto de la participación y del proceso judicial. Para realizar de manera íntegra los derechos de las víctimas, el Estatuto incorpora también el derecho a la reparación al disponer no solo la determinación de la responsabilidad penal, sino también una responsabilidad civil determinada por los jueces contra individuos condenados. El establecimiento de un fondo de víctimas permite operacionalizar dichas reparaciones, asegurando fondos y programas que reparen el daño causado por los crímenes cometidos con las víctimas y sus familias. Este órgano central del sistema del Estatuto de Roma ha recaudado a la fecha cerca de 47 millones de euros de contribuciones voluntarias provenientes de individuos y de 52 estados parte, solo de 52 estados parte, provenientes de todas las regiones del mundo. Y de individuos, como decía. En 2022, la recaudación estuvo cerca de los 4 millones de euros. Estos fondos han permitido poner en marcha programas de reparación para víctimas que fueron reclutadas durante su niñez y forzadas a participar en milicias, así como víctimas de ataques de naturaleza sexual, de desplazamientos y otros. Más de 2.000 niños y niñas que fueron soldados participan en programas de rehabilitación física, psicosocial y socioeconómica en la República Democrática del Congo, por ejemplo. Además, el fondo, con apoyo de la UNESCO, implementa programas de restauración de los mausoleos de Timbuctú y con la comunidad de Timbuctú para mantener la historia del templo a causa de crímenes de guerra cometidos contra propiedades culturales protegidas. Desde hace más de 15 años, el fondo implementa también otros programas para beneficio a las víctimas en 7 otras situaciones bajo jurisdicción de la Corte. Los programas de reparación y de beneficio a las víctimas se inspiran en las experiencias regionales que los preceden. El estatuto y el fondo empiezan ya a tener un impacto visible en la multitud de iniciativas nacionales para garantizar los derechos a la reparación. Este impacto se ve también en disposiciones sobre reparación a nivel nacional, incluidas en el Tratado de Ljubljana-La Haya, adoptado este año bajo su liderazgo, señora Presidenta. Que un tribunal internacional garantice reparaciones para individuos es un concepto innovador y operativamente complejo y, por tanto, queda de frente una gran tarea. La primera de esas tareas es abrazar, experimentar y profesionalizar los enfoques en la amplia gama de opciones de formas de reparación que van desde la compensación monetaria como la memorialización y el apoyo a formas de organización de víctimas. La segunda tarea está en que estas iniciativas requieren fondos de la comunidad internacional, la cual debe ser aún persuadida, eso está pendiente, de que estos programas no tienen un corte humanitario o asistencialista. No, estos programas tienen un valor único de reafirmación del Estado de Derecho. El Fondo de las Víctimas, junto con la Corte, presentan una visión integral de justicia que debe tener un impacto mayor, no solo en donde la Corte tiene jurisdicción, sino también a nivel nacional, en función del principio de complementariedad. Espero que esta conmemoración de hoy nos impulse a trabajar de manera coordinada y colaborativa para que podamos hacer realidad esta encomienda central del Estatuto de Roma y avanzar en la construcción de un mundo no solo más justo, sino también más solidario. Muchas gracias, muchas veces.
Muchas gracias, señora Tavares Mirabal. Algunos de los que hicieron una contribución esencial a la adopción del Estatuto de Roma en 1998 ya no están con nosotros. Antes de cerrar nuestra ceremonia de apertura, los invitamos a ver un breve video que reconoce esta contribución. El sistema del Estatuto de Roma es parte de su legado al mundo. Con este homenaje hemos llegado al final de nuestra ceremonia de inauguración. Doy muchas gracias al señor Serpa Suárez y a la señora Tripodi por su presencia en el día de hoy. So, after indulging in some nostalgia for the past, it is now time to reflect on the future of this historic achievement attained 25 years ago. An impressive list of high-level representatives have accepted the invitation to exchange views on this theme, the strategic vision for the next decade, and how to ensure consistent and sustainable support for the ICC. We are thankful that so many of you have taken the time to take part in this important discussion. At the same time, in light of the numbers of speakers on our list, we are forced to limit the time of interventions to 3 to 5 minutes maximum and to invite you to deliver your statements from your national seats. I apologize in advance but we are obliged to be quite strict with time management so as to ensure that we will be able to accommodate all of you in the short time we have. To assist you in keeping to the time, when you reach the 4th minute of your statement, the microphone will begin to blink to alert you that you need to conclude shortly. I'm not sure what happens after that, but for sure, nothing very good. I thank you for your cooperation in this regard. Those of you who have longer statements are encouraged to give it to the Secretariat so they are posted in the website of the court. Also, ministerial level representatives who were unable to attend in person or speakers that wish to deliver more comprehensive statements are encouraged to submit such statements in writing by 30th July to the Secretariat via email, so they are posted on the Assembly's webpage. As of today, we have been informed that Argentina, Chile, UK, and Sweden already submitted written statements, and Finland, as well as Iceland, as well as Slovakia, will be submitting written statements as well. I thank them for their statements and their continued support for the court. The list of speakers can be found at the conference officer's desk if you wish to consult. Now, let us proceed immediately with our first speaker, the Federal Minister for Foreign Affairs of Germany, Her Excellency Ms. Annalena Baerbock. You have the floor.
Madam President, Mr. President of the International Criminal Court, colleagues, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I quote, "It causes me pain to see the world as it is, but not to do anything, not to try, that would be a wrong." These are the words of Benjamin Ferencz, the last surviving prosecutor of the Nuremberg trials, who passed away this April at 103 years of age, and we just saw as the last person in the video. His entire life, Ferencz strove to bring justice to the victims of the most atrocious crimes and to build a world based on the power of the law. Ferencz argued that his lifetime was a proof that progress towards such a world was possible, despite all setbacks. He would point out to how, at key moments of history, politicians, diplomats, lawyers, and civil society advance international law to reflect new international realities. The adoption of the Rome Statute 25 years ago was such a key moment in history. By creating the International Criminal Court, the international community made a commitment. Victims shall receive justice. Perpetrators shall be held accountable. And where the most severe international crimes are committed, the international community will not look the other way. To my country, to me as a German foreign minister, the ICC has a special significance and responsibility among the international institutions. My country, Germany, has waged inhuman wars of aggression and committed most atrocious genocide, killing millions of people. Therefore, we have a special responsibility to do our parts so that such crimes will never happen again, to help bring justice to the victims, and to ensure accountability to the perpetrators. That is the reason why Germany is the second largest donor to the ICC. That is why we are proudly putting forward judicial candidates for elections to the court, like Dr. Ute Hohoff, who is with me here today. And that is why we continue to align our own national criminal law with the statute. German courts have pioneered trials for the international crimes committed by the so-called Islamic State and by officials of the Assad regime. Currently, Germany is working to make sexual slavery, exactly as defined in the statute of a crime, our national law. The victims of these crimes will have the right to take part in the proceedings so that they can make their voices heard. Time and again, the court has proven its courage to bring justice to the unseen, to the most vulnerable. And I want to thank its entire staff for their tireless work for the weakest, for their professionalism and independence. From the very start, the Rome Statute was meant to be a work in progress, just as international criminal law as a whole. The international community has proven in many instances that it was able to rise the occasions of those key moments of history that Benjamin Ferencz mentioned, even though it took sometimes time. For example, regarding the prosecution of sexualized violence. During the Balkan Wars, as well as in Rwanda, thousands of women and girls were raped, as were many before them in other conflicts. How often did women around the world hear that rape had always been a byproduct of war, that it was regular occurrence in times of conflict, that there were hardly any legal remedies available to them? Finally, the ICTY and the ICTR did not allow this unbearable result to stand. They passed convictions for rape as a crime against humanity. And in the Rome Statute, sexual violent crimes have been explicitly codified as crimes against humanity. Regarding the most vulnerable, the court has also brought more justice to children. I quote, "They were 9, 11, 13 years old. They cannot forget the terror of what they felt and the terror they inflicted. They cannot forget the sound of the machine guns. They cannot forget that they killed." With these words, a prosecutor of the International Criminal Court described the horrors experienced by children recruited in a militia when opening the court's trials in 2009. In this trial, the court convicted the man who was responsible for enlisting children to 14 years in prison. And for the first time in history of international law, the court invited those children to give testimony as victims in an international trial. Now we are taking a step further. Since the start of the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine, Russian authorities have been deporting thousands of Ukrainian children to Russia and to Russian-occupied territory. They have been taking them from children's homes and schools. They have taken them from summer camps where their parents had sent them. Can we imagine how they feel? Not to know where they are? To fear that at some point they will no longer recognize their parents? That the ICC based its arrest warrant against President Putin specifically on the deportation of Ukrainian children puts a spotlight on the most vulnerable in war. And the Russian war against Ukraine puts us at yet another key moment of history. A permanent member of the UN Security Council has invaded the territory of its neighbor, trying to place it under imperial domination. I'm convinced that at this moment is a moment for which Benjamin Ferencz reminded us that, I quote, "Not to do anything, not to try, that would be a wrong." Because if we do not respond to this, the answer of the international community to Russia's aggression is impunity. If a non-signatory to the Rome Statute, Russia can never be prosecuted for its war of aggression against Ukraine. Then our world will be a place where all states will live in fear of a bigger neighbor. I do not want to live in such a world. None of us wants to live in such a world. We have a responsibility to try, to join forces and find ways to close the accountability gap for the crime of the crimes, the crime of aggression. I will further elaborate as a side event later today. Germany is therefore advocating for reform of the Rome Statute to expand the ICC's jurisdiction to include the crime of aggression, to pick up the ball again and readdress what we didn't manage to achieve at Kampala. I believe that the 2025 review of the Rome Statute will be the place to have another look at the Kampala amendments. It's an opportunity to take a step forward, also for other reform projects. And I hear many ask, is pursuing a reform of the Rome Statute worth the effort? But what would have been happened if Benjamin Ferencz and the other prosecutors at Nuremberg had said, prosecuting Nazi crimes is too exhausting? What message would have been sent to the women in the Balkans and in Rwanda if we had told them that rape had to be endured in wartime? What would it have meant for the 9, 11, 13-year-old child soldiers if the ICC prosecutor had said that the hearing of children in court was out of question? What signal would it send to the people of Ukraine, to the world, if a bigger neighbor were to get away with invading another country? Not to do anything, not to try, that would be a wrong.
I thank you. I thank you very much for your statement. And now I give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. Jean Asselborn from Luxembourg.
Madame la Présidente, c'est un honneur pour moi de pouvoir participer à cette célébration du 25e anniversaire du Statut de Rome. Depuis l'adoption du Statut de Rome, le Luxembourg est un fervent défenseur de la CPI et de son rôle crucial dans la lutte contre l'impunité. Aujourd'hui, 25 ans après le succès de la conférence diplomatique de Rome, l'ordre international fondé sur la règle de droit est plus que jamais sous pression. Le risque que les auteurs des crimes les plus graves restent impunis est malheureusement toujours d'actualité. Voilà pourquoi nous devons redoubler d'efforts pour soutenir la Cour pénale internationale. La création de la Cour pénale internationale était un jalon dans le développement de la justice pénale internationale. Le Luxembourg demeure fermement opposé à toute tentative de discréditer la Cour et d'entraver son travail. Nous condamnons les récentes mesures et menaces qui visent le procureur et les juges impliqués dans la poursuite des crimes commis dans le contexte de la guerre d'agression lancée par la Russie contre l'Ukraine. Compte tenu du nombre croissant d'enquêtes, la charge de travail de la CPI est plus élevée que jamais. Pour que la Cour puisse être à la hauteur de nos attentes et surtout à la hauteur des attentes des victimes, elle doit disposer des ressources nécessaires pour accomplir son mandat en toute impartialité et en toute sécurité. Le Luxembourg appelle tous les États à coopérer pleinement avec la CPI, y compris en ce qui concerne l'exécution des mandats d'arrêt délivrés par la Cour. Nous encourageons le Conseil de sécurité à faire usage de son droit de déférer à la Cour pénale internationale les situations dans lesquelles des crimes relevant de la compétence de la Cour paraissent avoir été commis et à donner suite de façon efficace aux décisions qu'il a prises de saisir la Cour. Le Luxembourg appelle les États membres qui ne l'ont pas encore fait à ratifier le statut de Rome. Chaque adhésion au statut de Rome renforce l'état de droit au niveau international. C'est important, en particulier pour les petits États. Je salue la participation des États observateurs à cette table ronde. Je voudrais saisir cette occasion pour encourager l'Ukraine à ratifier le statut de Rome. Ce serait dans la suite logique de ces déclarations, reconnaissant la compétence de la Cour pour les crimes commis sur le territoire de l'Ukraine. Ce serait un signal important dans le contexte actuel. J'ai saisi cette occasion aussi pour encourager les États partis à ratifier les amendements au statut de Rome. Je pense aux amendements initiés par la Belgique concernant certaines catégories d'armes et à l'amendement initié par la Suisse sur le fait d'affamer délibérément des civils. Je pense aussi aux amendements promus par le Liechtenstein relatifs aux crimes d'agression qui ont été adoptés lors de la conférence de Kampala à laquelle j'ai moi-même eu l'honneur de participer en 2010. Mon pays les a ratifiés en janvier 2013. Le crime d'agression est le crime, comme vient de le dire Annalena Baerbock, le crime international suprême. Pour reprendre les termes du tribunal de Nuremberg, à nos yeux, il convient d'aligner la façon dont la CPI exerce sa compétence à l'égard du crime d'agression sur les dispositions en vigueur pour les 3 autres crimes. Le Luxembourg est prêt à s'appliquer activement dans ce processus. Les victimes doivent rester au centre de nos efforts. Le Luxembourg se félicite de l'augmentation des activités du Fonds au profit des victimes. En ce qui concerne l'assistance et aussi les réparations, nous sommes fiers de contribuer régulièrement à ces fonds. La CPI est source de justice réparatrice en donnant une voix aux victimes. Et enfin, je voudrais conclure en saluant l'action de la société civile qui a joué un rôle important dans l'établissement de la Cour et qui continue de défendre le mandat impartial et indépendant de la CPI. Nous devons préserver l'espace permettant aux organisations de la société civile de contribuer à la lutte contre l'impunité et redoubler d'efforts pour protéger les acteurs de la société civile contre toutes les représailles. Merci, Madame la Présidente. La CPI peut compter sur le soutien constant de mon pays à l'avenir. Merci beaucoup.
Je vous remercie. And now I give the floor to Her Excellency Ms. Caroline Edstadler, Federal Minister for the EU and Constitution of Austrian Federal Chancellery.
Thank you so much, Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies. 25 years ago, as we saw in this wonderful video, the Rome Statute established ICC as first permanent treaty-based court to try persons accused of war crimes, crimes against humanity, genocide, and the crime of aggression. Since then, the ICC is indispensably in the fight against impunity and delivering hope and justice to survivors. Austria welcomes its tremendous achievements and reaffirms unwavering support. We are also determined to defend ICC principles, preserve ICC's integrity, undeterred by any threats or measures against ICC. Anniversaries are a good occasion to celebrate, but anniversaries also invite us to reflect on challenges ahead. Last year, the war returned to Europe. Horrible crimes were committed against innocent individuals in Ukraine. The pictures of Bucha and other cities are forever engraved in our collective memories. And as a former criminal judge, let me be really clear. No one is above the law. Perpetrators must be held accountable. ICC is crucial in bringing persons responsible to those unspeakable crimes to justice. Austria voluntarily contributed 300,000 euros to support ICC work, and we are also seconding a legal expert to the Office of the Prosecutor. Ukraine is sadly not the only situation before ICC. There are 4 ongoing trials and investigations in 17 situations across 4 continents. In addition to the heavy workload, ICC is facing an increasingly complex operating environment. To navigate the challenges ahead, we, the states parties to the Rome Statute, need to ensure consistent and sustainable support for ICC. I would like to focus on 5 points which we consider particularly important. First, to promote universality. Only then can the fight against impunity become global. We better convince non-state parties to benefit of ICC for the promotion of justice and explain the principles of complementarity. Second, we should assist those for whom ICC seeks justice, victims and survivors. Therefore, Austria gave a 50,000 euro voluntary contribution to the Trust Fund of Victims. Third, state parties should comply with the obligation to cooperate with ICC, including by executing arrest warrants promptly. Fourth, we need to support civil society. Their work is vital in reinforcing the court and pressing for accountability. And fifth, as state parties, we need to equip ICC with the tool it needs. The Rome Statute unduly restricts jurisdiction over crime of aggression. It is important to close jurisdictional gaps to end impunity for terrible crimes. We have to act together as state parties to strengthen the rule of law. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, there is always room for improvement. The ICC on its part must continue to enhance its efficiency and implement reforms. Let us not forget, for justice to prevail, it needs patience and endurance. I assure you, Austria will persist and do its utmost to support the court in bringing justice to victims and in ending impunity. Thank you so much.
I thank you. And now I give the floor to Her Excellency, Ms. Dominique Hassler, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Liechtenstein.
Madam President, I appreciate this opportunity to offer some thoughts on the International Criminal Court, which has been a foreign policy priority for Liechtenstein for long years. We should first and foremost acknowledge and emphasize the quality of the Rome Statute. Hailed as one of the landmark achievements at the time of adoption, the treaty was very much stood the test of time. Aspects that stand out are the definitions of the crimes, including the crime of aggression, which was added to the Rome Statute at the Kampala Review Conference, but also the provisions on victims' participation and the progress with respect to sexual and gender-based violence. Praising the quality of the treaty does not mean that it can and should not be improved. As we speak today, though, the biggest task for us as legislators is bringing the court's jurisdiction in line with the other 3 core crimes. massive violations of the prohibition of the illegal use of force are a threat to the international order, and they bring unspeakable misery and suffering. More than 10 years after the adoption of the Kampala Amendments, it is high time to acknowledge this fact and act on it by amending the narrow jurisdictional reach of the court over the crime of aggression, as mentioned by the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Germany. My second thought today goes to the relationship between the International Court and the United Nations. The Rome Statute is underpinned by the relationship agreement of the Court with the United Nations, whose full application is of crucial importance to both organizations, given their strong common purpose and also institutional links. Accountability and the fight against impunity are a key task for the United Nations. And indeed, the International Criminal Court remains the central judicial body in the fight against impunity if and when national judiciaries fall in their obligation to investigate and prosecute the most serious crimes. The most important overlap of the mandates of the two bodies is the question of aggression. Fundamentally a peace organization, the United Nations has the prohibition of the illegal use of force at the very core of its charter. This provision is complemented by the criminalization of illegal warfare under the Rome Statute, the complement to the relevant provisions in the United Nations Charter. There has never been a stronger need for a vibrant and cooperative relationship between the Court and the United Nations than today. Today is also a good day to recommit ourselves to extend political support for the ICC and to stand up for the judicial independence, especially in the face of political attacks. The ICC is tasked to prosecute the individuals with the biggest share of responsibility for the most serious crimes under international law. More often than not, these are bound to be very powerful individuals who are more likely than not to do what they can to undermine and attack the court. After the arrest warrants issued against the president and a high senior official of the Russian Federation as part of its work on Ukraine, the court finds itself yet again exposed to such attacks, which have led to heightened insecurity and also financial costs for the court. We hope that state parties will strongly and unequivocally reject these attacks. My final reflection today is on the issues of universality. Madam President, the Rome Statute has undoubtedly been a successful treaty, but the need to move ratifications forward more efficiently today is also obvious. More than a third of the UN membership remains outside the Rome Statute system, some of the most populous states among them. Together, we should recommit the universality today and make every effort to pursue as many states as possible to join this historic undertaking to advance the rule of law at the international level with full respect for the sovereignty of all states. I thank you.
I thank you. And now I give the floor to Her Excellency, Ms. Ima Torfaus, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Andorra.
Madame la Présidente, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, Excellences, c'est un honneur pour moi de pouvoir m'adresser à vous à l'occasion du 25e anniversaire de l'adoption du statut de Rome de la Cour pénale internationale. Les anniversaires sont l'occasion de dresser des bilans et de se projeter vers l'avenir. En 2002, la création de la Cour pénale internationale a lancé un avertissement aux auteurs des crimes les plus graves et porté un message d'espoir aux victimes de ces crimes. En différents endroits du monde, la justice a rendu possible la réconciliation et la paix. Après 25 ans, le statut de Rome est un cadre juridique solide, mais plus que jamais, la lutte contre l'impunité a besoin du soutien sans faille de la communauté internationale. Alors que des conflits violents continuent à secouer le monde, je pense en particulier à la guerre en Ukraine qui se trouve depuis le 2 mars 2022 sous enquête, la Cour pénale internationale requiert un soutien politique et financier accru. L'Andorre apporte un soutien indéfectible à la Cour depuis la rédaction du Statut de Rome et elle a appuyé différentes initiatives destinées à améliorer son fonctionnement. Nous figurons ainsi parmi les 45 États parties qui ont soutenu les amendements sur les crimes de guerre et sur le crime d'agression. Nous apportons aussi, depuis 2008, des contributions volontaires au fonds au profit des victimes qui, grâce à la réparation, permettent à ces personnes de retrouver une vie digne. Il nous semble par ailleurs essentiel d'œuvrer pour atteindre l'objectif d'universalité du statut de Rome. Pour cela, nous invitons tous les États non parties à y adhérer. Nous saluons aussi le fait que 17 situations sont actuellement sous enquête, couvrant désormais 4 continents. Comme vous le savez peut-être, le premier paragraphe du préambule du statut de Rome a été proposé par la principauté d'Andorre, un pays fier de ses plus de 800 ans de paix. Je ne peux pas m'empêcher de le lire. Conscient que tous les peuples sont unis par des liens étroits et que leurs cultures forment un patrimoine commun, et soucieux du fait que cette mosaïque délicate puisse être brisée à tout moment. Pour être fidèle à sa vocation universelle, la Cour pénale internationale doit être attentive à ne pas briser cette mosaïque délicate de culture. Pour cela, il est essentiel qu'elle reste ouverte aux différentes cultures juridiques et qu'elle œuvre dans plusieurs langues, le multilinguisme étant une garantie du respect des droits des victimes et la condition sine qua non d'un dialogue fluide entre les équipes de la Cour et les autorités judiciaires nationales. Señora Presidenta, Excelencias, señoras y señores, antes de finalizar, quisiera hacer un llamamiento para la adhesión universal al acuerdo sobre los privilegios e inmunidades de la Corte Penal Internacional, que representa un marco esencial para garantizar su buen funcionamiento. Todos los Estados parte del Estatuto de Roma forman parte de una cadena que requiere la participación de todos y cada uno de los Estados miembros de las Naciones Unidas. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Now I give the floor to Her Excellency, Ms. Catherine Colonna, Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs of France.
Je vous remercie, Madame la Présidente, de l'organisation de cette cérémonie, ainsi que l'Italie et les Pays-Bas pour la séance de commémoration de cette année. Je souhaite d'abord rendre hommage à tous ceux, diplomates, magistrats, représentants d'ONG, parlementaires, qui ont permis au projet de la Cour pénale internationale d'aboutir il y a 25 ans et qui restent aujourd'hui engagés pour que justice soit rendue. La Cour est une juridiction capable d'enquêter sur les pires atrocités, de condamner les coupables et de répondre aux besoins de justice, capable de décisions fortes, comme elle l'a fait en émettant 2 mandats d'arrêt contre le président russe et celle qui se fait appeler commissaire pour les droits de l'enfant, mais aussi dans le passé contre l'ancien président soudanais, par exemple, ou en prononçant des condamnations dans 6 affaires, parce que personne ne doit se soustraire à la justice. La lutte contre l'impunité exige l'engagement de femmes et d'hommes, engagement comme le vôtre, Madame la Présidente, et celui du président et du procureur de la Cour pénale internationale et de l'ensemble des juges pour lesquels la France propose la candidature d'un magistrat reconnu. En commémorant aujourd'hui le statut de Rome, nous marquons notre volonté intacte de répondre aux besoins de justice des victimes, aux besoins aussi de tenir les responsables comptables de leurs crimes. Je le redis, mais nous le savons tous car l'histoire nous l'enseigne, il ne peut pas y avoir de paix durable sans justice. Je réitère ainsi le plein soutien de la France à la CPI, seule juridiction pénale internationale permanente et à vocation universelle, soutien à la CPI et à ses travaux. La Cour doit pouvoir travailler en toute sécurité et sans recevoir de menaces. La France a soutenu la Cour dès la signature du Statut de Rome, soutien humain, financier, logistique et en matière de coopération judiciaire. C'est le cas aujourd'hui, par exemple, pour l'enquête sur la situation en Ukraine, victime d'une guerre d'agression illégale, injustifiée et injustifiable, dont la Russie est la seule responsable. 2 équipes d'experts français se sont par exemple rendues en Ukraine pour aider la Cour et les juridictions ukrainiennes à collecter des preuves. La France poursuivra son soutien aussi longtemps qu'il le faudra. Mais au-delà de l'Ukraine, la CPI souhaite agir partout dans le monde pour que les crimes les plus graves ne restent pas impunis. Elle le fait au Darfour, où la situation est très préoccupante, situation sur laquelle la Cour nous avait déjà alertés en 2005. Souvent aussi, les dossiers dépassent les frontières des États. C'est le cas pour les atrocités commises par les dirigeants et les membres du groupe Wagner, en Afrique notamment. Ils devront, eux aussi, rendre des comptes. La CPI a su aussi innover, comme lorsqu'elle a enquêté sur la destruction du patrimoine culturel dans l'affaire Almadi, et nous saluons ce travail. Madame la Présidente, enquêter sur les crimes qui sont de sa compétence, c'est faire œuvre de justice et de paix. La France, en 2023, a ainsi triplé sa contribution financière au fonds de soutien de la CPI au profit des victimes. Pour remplir son mandat, la CPI nécessite le soutien continu et la coopération de tous les États partis au Statut de Rome, 2 obligations essentielles. Nous appelons donc tous nos partenaires partis à la Cour à le démontrer jour après jour, quelles que soient les circonstances, comme nous appelons bien sûr à la ratification universelle du statut. La France prend toute sa part, elle vient ainsi de conclure un accord sur l'exécution des peines prononcées par la CPI. Madame la Présidente, nous célébrons aujourd'hui l'anniversaire d'un quart de siècle au service de la justice. Mais cette journée, bien plus qu'un anniversaire, a pour objectif de souhaiter bien d'autres bilans positifs du travail indispensable de la Cour, de former le vœu que pour les 25 prochaines années, la CPI soit toujours indépendante, mais encore plus universelle, encore plus efficace, encore plus rapide au service des victimes, de leur mémoire et de la paix. Agissons pour que justice soit faite. Je vous remercie.
Je vous remercie. And now I give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. Eamon Ryan, Minister for the Environment, Climate, Communications and Transport from Ireland.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I would first of all like to thank the organisers of today's important event. It provides a timely platform not only to reflect on what has been achieved over the last 25 years, but also to begin a conversation about how we see the International Criminal Court can meet the challenges of the next 10 years. Ireland reiterates its strong support for the ICC. We commend the work of state parties to the Rome Statute of the Court, to civil society and the staff of the court for their tireless work in establishing a fully functioning, permanent international court focused on dealing with the most serious international crimes. To build upon this historic accomplishment, Ireland believes that there are a number of priorities that all stakeholders should pursue. Firstly, the ICC must place the needs of the victims at its core. When state parties came together in Rome on that momentous day 25 years ago, it was in the spirit of reparative justice for victims of unimaginable atrocities. We must deliver on that promise if we are to demonstrate the value of the court to future generations. One of the welcome innovations in the Rome Statute is the manner in which it provides for victims to participate in proceedings. The other very significant innovation is the establishment of the Trust Fund for Victims, which responds to the harms resulting from crimes under the jurisdiction of the court. The Trust Fund depends on voluntary contributions for its vital work, and I'm pleased to say that Ireland was able to contribute €1.5 million to this fund last December, and we encourage all states to consider making new or increased contributions towards this worthy endeavour. The Court must also continue to pursue its mandate to end impunity with the utmost independence and impartiality. This requires that, as part of the budgeting process, state parties provide sufficient financial support to enable the Court to effectively carry out the work that we have tasked it with. It also requires state parties to be steadfast in publicly supporting the ICC against political attacks from those who seek to undermine its pursuit of justice. In order to ensure sustainable support for the Court, it is essential that it's seen as being above power politics or geopolitical interests. Finally, the ICC must be a global hub for justice. The values of justice and accountability encapsulated in the Rome Statute are universal. Ireland is committed to the universality of the Rome Statute. The greater the reach of the International Criminal Court, the greater the chance that the core principles underlying the statute will be respected. We encourage all states which have not done so to consider ratification of the Rome Statute, as well as the Court's agreement on privileges and impunities. In doing so, we recall that the ICC does not substitute for national judicial systems, but is a court of last resort. States continue to bear the primary responsibility to investigate the most serious international crimes, acting in accordance with the principles of complementarity as an important element of the overall international framework for international criminal justice. In conclusion, we have seen the ICC grow from an aspiration to a resilient institution at the heart of international justice over the last 25 years. The next 10 years will be crucial as the ICC matures and responds to an ever-changing world. We, as state parties, have an obligation to give it every support in meeting these new challenges, both for the victims of past atrocities and for future generations. Thank you.
I thank you, and now I give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Zbigniew Rau, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Poland.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to be with you today here in New York to mark the 25th anniversary of the adoption of the Rome Statute. If we are to fulfill the statute's aim of achieving peace and justice in the current global situation, brave and decisive steps will be required from every member of the international community. The International Criminal Court is making an important contribution towards that goal by attempting to bring those responsible for international crimes before justice. Accordingly, I am grateful for the opportunity to address this forum on the ICC status and prospects in what promises to be a momentous decade. Ladies and gentlemen, the ICC holds a unique mandate in the international justice system. It was the first body that sought to permanently align, as Nuremberg trials prosecutor Robert H. Jackson once put it, the forces of international law, its precepts, its prohibitions, and most of all, its sanctions on the side of peace, while eliminating the impunity of perpetrators of international crimes. The hopes of humanity are lodged in the enormous task entrusted to the ICC to prosecute and punish the most serious crimes of concern to the international community. The Court's establishment marked a pivotal moment in the collective global commitment to uphold human rights and the rule of law. Its accomplishments over the past 25 years testify to the dedication of the OEC's judges, prosecutors, and staff who have worked diligently to ensure that the gravest crimes do not go untried. The ICC has proven to be a vital framework capable of adapting to an ever-changing global environment. Over the years, however, the Court has been to weather criticism for having the tangible successes. Some countries perceive the ICC as an institution that has failed to meet the hopes and expectations one places in it. But let us not forget the difficult international and political domain in which the ICC is forced to operate. The pursuit of justice is a continuous process that requires the court and the state parties to work in tandem. No institution can achieve its goals if the state parties themselves fail to comply with what has previously been agreed. I would like to stress here that the ICC has neither the resources nor the instruments to compel states to execute its decisions. Ladies and gentlemen, these challenges should not deter us from striving for a stronger and more effective international criminal judiciary system. Instead, they should serve to remind us of the importance of collective action and persistence in the pursuit of justice. The ICC's success depends not only on the dedication of its staff, but also on unwavering support and cooperation from states and civil society. Looking to the future, we must acknowledge these challenges and work together, step by step, to strengthen the ICC's impact and effectiveness. First and foremost, that involves expanding the Court's reach by encouraging more states to ratify the Rome Statute. To do so, we must address concerns and criticism raised by the state parties to ensure that the ICC operates in a transparent manner, restoring trust in the institution. As state parties, we need to help the Court fulfill its mandate and respect its decisions. We must press on with patience and determination to promote the cause of international justice, for which the ICC is the best instrument we have at hand. Thank you.
I thank you. And now I give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Ronald Lamola, Minister of Justice and Correctional Services from South Africa.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak on behalf of South Africa on this special occasion as we observe the 25th anniversary of the adoption of the Rome Statute. Through our former President Nelson Mandela's leadership 25 years ago, South Africa became one of the first countries to sign the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. The need to prevent atrocities and to end impunity for the most serious crimes of concern to the international community remain as relevant today as it was 25 years ago. The establishment of the court was a significant milestone in this regard for all nations, demonstrating our commitment to advancing the protection of human rights. South Africa believes the international community can only succeed in this effort with a strong and independent international criminal court. In addition to judicial and prosecutorial independence, the ICC must treat all situations fairly and guard against becoming an instrument of global power struggles. South Africa believes that this independence is critical to ensure sustainable support for the ICC. We cannot deny that the ICC continues to undergo intense international scrutiny. The credibility of the court continues to be called into question on account of perceptions of the court focusing its resources on certain situations only while crimes committed in other situations do not receive the same commensurate attention. These concerns should be addressed, as the court must be seen as even-handed in its efforts to uphold the rule of law in the executions of its duties and mandate. Additionally, the fact that some powerful states, notable permanent members of the Security Council, have not acceded to or ratified the Rome Statute 25 years after its adoption remains a concern. Our ideal of a Rome Statute system that is universally and that ensures equality before the law remains unattained. When one considers the referral and deferral powers of the United Nations Security Council, this shortcoming, a fundamental injustice, is particularly objectionable. The integrity and the independence of the court is also put at risk by the fact that efforts to reform the UN Security Councils have also not progressed. Madam President, it is crucial to provide each situation with the attention and priorities it requires. And the rule of law and accountability for international crimes must apply equally to all. Any perception of bias by the prosecution or the court will impede our endeavors to achieve peace, security, and well-being of the world. The investigation in Palestine's situation, including on the system of apartheid that Israel has established, has not advanced. The issue of Palestine has been on the agenda of the United Nations for more than 7 decades. The ICC must urgently advance in its investigation in accordance with its temporary jurisdiction into crimes committed in the territory of the State of Palestine. We must remember the people of Palestine, Afghanistan, Iraq, and other parts of the world. South Africa has learned from our history of crimes against humanity that it is our utmost significance to acknowledge and tackle any deficiencies in the ICC and strive to strengthen it. We must not disregard the fundamental objective of balancing the promotion of peace and ensuring justice in all our endeavors. We must treat all crimes that shock the conscience of humanity across the globe with equal indignation, no matter what the color or creed of the people affected. The international rule of law should have no eyes. Everyone must be treated fairly, equally, and without prejudice. We believe this will sustain the future of the court, where all view it and also view the prosecutorial powers being that for the international world, and everyone will be treated with the same treatment, irrespective of where they come from, birth, or the origins. And this will safeguard the importance and the future of this court. Thank you very much, Madam President.
I thank you. And now I give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. Riyad Mansour, Minister and Permanent Observer of the State of Palestine to the United Nations. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Excellencies, Madam President, Mr. Prosecutor, victims and their families, civil society. 25 years ago, we formulated a universal document with a just calling to end impunity for the most serious crimes of concern to the international community, to prosecute perpetrators, bring justice to victims, and deter the commission of crimes. The long road towards the Rome Statute was inspired by tragedies, terrible human tragedies, human-made tragedies, human-endured tragedies. We built a universal court that embodies fundamental principles that serious crimes cannot go unpunished, that victims deserve recognition and a recourse through the law, and that peace and security require justice. Accountability was no longer a possibility, but an expectation. Access to international justice was no longer a slogan, but a recognized right. Then, how come Palestinian victims continue to be denied justice? How come the perpetrators who are confessing their crimes every day, committing them in broad daylight, legislating them, adopting budgets for their commission, spelling them out in government guidelines and plans, and boasting about them are not held accountable. Why are they undeterred by the court and its investigation? Why do they believe it will not yield results? It is because 9 years of preliminary examination and an ongoing investigation in the situation in Palestine did not yield the progress that was achieved in 9 days in other situations. Is it because the most protracted protection and impunity crisis in contemporary history is also the least funded situation of all? The UN independent experts, the elders, the European Parliament, the former President of Colombia, leading human rights figures and civil society organizations, people and countries from all corners of the globe are calling for progress in the investigation in the crimes committed in Palestine, underlying that the court's credibility and authority is at stake. They all reject a two-tier global accountability system. And my brother from South Africa spoke clearly and loudly in this case. The mandate of the court is yet to be implemented in Palestine. We stand ready to do our part and reiterate here our full commitment to cooperate with the prosecutor. Excellencies, as we gather here to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Rome Statute, we should honor our obligation. We should honor our pledge, never again, by providing the court the resources it needs and the support it requires, by upholding its impartiality, by not politicizing its work, by ensuring non-selectivity, by rejecting double standards. Excellencies, the State of Palestine stands alongside our court, and I repeat, our court, its mandate, its universal calling. We stand for the defense of humanity, shoulder to shoulder with all of you, looking to pursue accountability and achieve justice, to fulfill the promise and aim of the Rome Statute. And I thank you very much, Madam President.
I thank you. And now I give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Egils Levits, former President of Latvia, speaking on behalf of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. You have the floor, sir.
Madam President, I have the honor to speak today on behalf of the three Baltic states, Estonia, Lithuania, and my own country, Latvia. Today, we gather here to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the adoption of the Rome Statute, a milestone in the pursuit of justice and accountability for the gravest crimes of international law. As we reflect on this momentous occasion, we must recognize both the progress made and the challenges that lie ahead in our collective journey toward a more just and peaceful world. The establishment of the ICC is a powerful testament of our shared belief that accountability should prevail over impunity and that justice should be accessible to all. Today, we reaffirm our unwavering commitment to these principles and express our gratitude to those who have worked tirelessly to bring justice to victims and affected communities. We acknowledge the remarkable progress ICC has made in fulfilling its mandate. The court, independently and impartially, has investigated and prosecuted individuals responsible for genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity in accordance with general principles of criminal law and human rights. Hence, not only strengthening international justice, but also serving as a beacon of hope for survivors and victims offering them a platform to voice their suffering and seek redress. From the very beginning, the Baltic states have been state parties to the Rome Statute and maintained their support throughout time. We are proud that Judge Madame Anita Uszczacka, who served at the ICC from 2003 to 2015, was the first and so far the only judge from the Baltic states. During her tenure, she contributed to the court's work in promoting justice, the rule of law, and pursuit of the accountability for grave international crimes. Her presence in the ICC showcased the region's deep-rooted belief in the importance of international criminal justice. This year, Andres Parmas has been nominated by Estonia as a candidate for election as a judge of the ICC. Madam President, today we must also acknowledge the challenges that lie ahead. The ICC's jurisdiction remains limited as not all nations have ratified the Rome Statute. We call upon those who have not yet done so to consider joining the global consensus in the fight against impunity. We urge all nations to enhance their cooperation with the ICC and provide the necessary assistance to facilitate its crucial work. In this anniversary, we wish the Court to overcome the challenges and to continue improvement by striving for greater efficiency and effectiveness while maintaining the highest standards of due process. We also encourage the Court to strengthen its outreach efforts, promoting awareness of its mandate and strengthening ties between the Court and affected communities. By doing so, we eventually will instill greater confidence in the ICC and ensure its relevance in the face of evolving challenges. Madam President, we commend the ICC for the open investigation by the prosecutor of the ICC regarding alleged atrocity crimes in Ukraine and for issuing the arrest warrants for Vladimir Putin and Maria Lvova-Belova in relation to the forced deportation of children from Ukraine to Russia. These arrest warrants and investigations show how the ICC is progressing. However, as the International Criminal Court, in this case, does not have jurisdiction over the crime of aggression, the establishment of an ad hoc international special tribunal would be the most appropriate tool that would complement the jurisdiction of the court in the fight against impunity. In conclusion, I would like to express my gratitude to all those who have worked tirelessly over the past 25 years to advance the cause of international criminal justice. The road ahead may be challenging, but with our collective efforts, we can continue to make progress towards a more just and peaceful world, a world that respects the dignity and worth of every individual. Thank you.
I thank you, sir. I'll give the floor now to Mr. Marko Stucin, State Secretary for European Affairs, International Law and the Protection of Interests of the Ministry of Foreign and European Affairs of Slovenia.
Madam President, distinguished members of the Court, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to address you on this occasion, a quarter of a century after the intensive, difficult, and yet rewarding negotiations in Rome. In these 25 years, the ICC has become a permanent central institution to fight impunity for international crimes all around the globe. I would briefly like to outline some of key elements where our work should be focused in the upcoming years in order to make the international criminal law system with the ICC in its midst even better, more resilient and efficient. As the court of the last resource, we should strive to reserve the principle of complementarity of the ICC only for the most serious cases, and the states who sincerely want to safeguard the foundation of international peace and security must actively engage in full and prompt cooperation with the court, as well as among themselves. And I'm proud to report that on 26th of May this year, at the diplomatic conference in Slovenia, an important legal gap has been filled with the adoption of Ljubljana, The Hague MLA Convention. It is a landmark treaty which will strengthen international legal cooperation in the investigation and prosecution of atrocity crimes, and we invite all states to sign the MLA Convention in February next year in The Hague. Second, we should put our efforts in strengthening the court itself. The independence and impartiality of the court should be protected. Modern technologies should be embraced. Sustainable financing should mirror the existing needs. The independent expert review recommendations are an excellent basis for achieving this goal. We welcome the already introduced changes and progresses in various areas, as well as efforts toward an improvement of the working culture of the court. Moreover, what seemed impossible in Rome at the time became a reality at the review conference in Kampala. Today we also mark the 5th anniversary of the activation of the Kampala Amendments, which extended the jurisdiction of the ICC to include the crime of aggression. And we encourage all states that have not yet ratified the amendments to consider their steadfast ratification. And as we are at the heart of the United Nations, we should focus more on the overall picture, including the prevention of conflicts, the protection and preservation of peace and security, and a closer cooperation between the United Nations, including the Security Council and the ICC. Ladies and gentlemen, it seems that a great deal remains to be done, but I wish that in 10 years' time we'll not have to deliberate on sustainable support for the ICC, but that its decisions and those of other courts and tribunals will simply be respected. I invite all states who have not yet done so to accede to or ratify the Rome Statute and thus bring it a step closer to universality. Thank you.
I thank you. And now I give the floor to Ms. Corinne Ciceron-Bühler, Vice Minister, Department of Foreign Affairs of Switzerland.
Madame la Présidente, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, nous sommes réunis aujourd'hui pour célébrer le 25e anniversaire de l'adoption du Statut de Rome, qui marque d'une pierre blanche l'engagement de la communauté internationale dans la lutte contre l'impunité. Avec la création de la Cour pénale internationale, c'est un élément essentiel de l'architecture multilatérale défendant l'État de droit qui a vu le jour. La Cour partage des valeurs fondamentales avec le système des Nations unies. La paix, la sécurité, l'état de droit et le respect du droit international. Ce sont ces mêmes valeurs qui sont mises à mal lors de la commission des crimes atroces que la CPI s'efforce de poursuivre. C'est pour cette raison que la Cour mérite un soutien indéfectible de la communauté internationale, aujourd'hui, pour la décennie à venir et au-delà. Forte de cette conviction, j'aimerais souligner 4 domaines dans lesquels les États devraient s'engager pour concrétiser leur soutien à la CPI. Premièrement, la Suisse insiste sur la nécessité d'allouer des ressources suffisantes à la Cour. Pour que la CPI puisse assumer le rôle majeur qu'on attend d'elle, il convient de lui octroyer les moyens financiers dont elle a besoin. Des mesures de soutien ad hoc ou le versement de contributions volontaires sont certes à saluer, mais ils ne sauraient se substituer au budget ordinaire de la Cour, qui doit être suffisant pour lui permettre de mener à bien son mandat dans toutes les situations sous son examen. Deuxièmement, la Suisse s'engage depuis longtemps pour renforcer l'efficacité et l'efficience de la Cour. Nous saluons le processus d'examen mené dans le cadre de l'Assemblée des États parties. Il s'agit maintenant de poursuivre la mise en œuvre des recommandations des experts indépendants. Nous appelons toutes les parties prenantes, y compris les États parties, à s'atteler à cette tâche. Nous rappelons en outre que ce processus doit en tout temps respecter l'indépendance de la Cour. Troisièmement, tous les États déterminés à lutter contre l'impunité pour les crimes les plus graves devraient apporter leur soutien à la Cour en tant qu'instance judiciaire indépendante et impartiale. La Suisse rappelle ici son appui indéfectible à la Cour et réitère son engagement à faire respecter et à défendre les principes et les valeurs garantis par le Statut de Rome et à préserver son intégrité. Enfin, pour mener à bien sa mission, la Cour a besoin d'un statut solide et d'un soutien universel. Nous invitons tous les États qui ne l'ont pas encore fait à ratifier le Statut de Rome et ses amendements. Il est important de veiller à ce que la CPI soit en mesure de faire face aux crimes commis aujourd'hui. C'est pourquoi les États parties devraient ratifier les amendements qui ont été adoptés jusqu'ici, qui concernent les crimes de guerre et le crime d'agression. De nouvelles ratifications de ces amendements maximiseraient la protection des victimes et contribueraient à ce que le statut de Rome permette de poursuivre tous les crimes relevant de sa compétence, peu importe le lieu où ces atrocités sont commises et peu importe leur auteur. Mesdames, Messieurs, la Cour est un gage d'espoir pour les générations futures qu'elle devrait protéger contre les crimes épouvantables dont leurs ancêtres ont été victimes. C'est en ces termes que Kofi Annan saluait l'avènement de la CPI il y a un quart de siècle. À nous d'entretenir et de concrétiser cet espoir en apportant à la Cour le soutien qu'elle mérite. Je vous remercie de votre attention.
Je vous remercie. And now I give the floor to Mr. Francisco André, Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs of Portugal.
Madam President, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to address this event to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. The adoption of the Rome Statutes in 1998 was the culmination of a long process and a defining moment in international criminal law that represented a new era in the protection and promotion of fundamental rights of individuals and communities. With the establishment of the ICC, victims regained hope for further accountability, and those responsible for the most serious crimes of concern to the international community as a whole learned that their acts will not be tolerated and that they would be accountable under international criminal law. Madam President, Portugal highlights the work done by the court in bringing perpetrators to the most serious crimes to justice and providing justice to victims, as well as its work as a mechanism of restorative justice in post-conflict situations. Currently, the court counts with 123 state parties from all regions of the world. It has an increasing level of activity, most recently due to the group referral by a large number of states of the situation in Ukraine. This, in our view, is a testimony to the importance given to and the hope deposited in the institution by states. States are at the center of international criminal justice. The court has a complementary nature. Jurisdiction over perpetrators starts and lays primarily with states and national jurisdictions. We should, therefore, in the coming years, continue working towards the universality of the Rome Statute. The role of the ICC is invaluable to the common goal of the international community to end impunity. However, it relies on the cooperation of states to fulfill its mandate and plays its part in achieving peace, security, and justice. The Court is, therefore, as strong as the cooperation and support states are willing to offer. The United Nations also play an important part in helping the Court, namely by referring to the prosecutor a situation that would otherwise not fall under the jurisdiction of the Court. This is crucial to ensure that justice reaches many victims of war crimes, genocide, crimes against humanity, and crimes of aggression. Madam President, the ICC, being a human institution, is not without flaws. We must remain committed to having a comprehensive and constructive dialogue and address concerns raised regarding the Court while respecting its integrity and independence as a judicial institution. In this sense, Portugal praises the ongoing review process and welcomes efforts made by both the Court and the state parties to address the report of an independent experts and the recommendations contained therein. We must continue taking joint action in this matter and maintain a dialogue between all relevant stakeholders throughout this process. It is our belief that this process can lead not only to an increase in the efficiency and effectiveness of the Court, but also to a better overall public image of the Court. Furthermore, we need to reflect on our decision regarding the crime of aggression. especially in the light of recent events. The adoption of the definition and the conditions for the exercise of jurisdiction over the crime of aggression in 2010 and the activation of the court's jurisdiction over the crime of aggression in 2017 were two landmark achievements for the court. However, it is our understanding, taking into consideration the conflict in Ukraine and the alleged crimes committed, that the time has come to review the decisions that were made at the time and consider placing the crime of aggression at the same level as the other crimes under the court's jurisdiction. Madam President, before concluding, allow me a brief word to acknowledge the importance of civil society in helping the court pursuing justice and redress for victims, as well as the importance of victims and witnesses and their participation in the proceedings of the court. Portugal reaffirms its commitment to the ICC and to the values it stands for. We will continue to strongly support the work of the court, its independence, and its role in ensuring that the most serious crimes of international concern do not go unpunished. It is our wish that we continue building on what we have been historically started in Rome in 1998. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank you. I now give the floor to Ms. Lotte Marron, sorry if I pronounced it wrong, the State Secretary for Development Cooperation, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Denmark.
Thank you, Madam President. It is indeed a pleasure to be here on this day where we commemorate the 25th anniversary of the adoption of the Rome Statute. Denmark has always been a strong supporter of the court, and today we reaffirm our full commitment. For Denmark, the International Criminal Court remains a crucial part of upholding the rules-based international order and an essential institution in the fight against impunity. We live in a defining time, and the court's role is now more important than ever. Unfortunately, the most horrific crimes continue to be committed across the world. This now includes the crimes committed by the Russian Federation, a permanent member of the UN Security Council, against Ukraine and its population in the unprovoked war of aggression. We must support the ICC in every possible way in order to ensure accountability for the perpetrators of the most serious international crimes. Lack of accountability anywhere sends the wrong signal. It undermines our international legal order and risks paving the way for further atrocities. It is up to the members, up to us of the Rome Statute, to enable the court to implement its mandate. We are responsible. Of course, this includes consistent financial contribution, yet the legal cooperation with the court is equally important, for instance, when it comes to ensuring respect for arrest warrants issued by the court. We call on all states to adopt national legislation based on the Rome Statute to ensure effective cooperation with the court and to enable domestic prosecution of crimes under jurisdiction of the court. Another key component is the ratification of the Kampala amendments on the crime of aggression. More countries need to come on board. In Denmark, we are now in the process of reviving such a ratification. We invite other state parties to do the same. Madam President, the best way to ensure the functioning of the court is for states to commit to the Rome Statute and support the fulfillment of its content. We, Denmark, recommit to the mission underlining the Rome Statute, the prevention of future atrocity crimes, and the ending of impunity for such crime. We are ready to engage in a debate on the best way to achieve these overall goals. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank you. We have now completed the list of speakers from state parties, and now we turn to speakers from observer states, and the next speaker on my list is the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, His Excellency Mr. Dmytro Kuleba.
As it is the case with the ratification of the Rome Statute by Ukraine, Ukraine is running late. But I apologize for keeping you waiting. I deliberately wanted to take part in this distinguished gathering because Ukraine does attach great importance to cooperation with the International Criminal Court. But first I would like to recall that many famous writers and philosophers from the past have helped to shape the present as we know it. And when the idea of International Criminal Court was born, it was nothing but a rather philosophical idea, and now it became reality. And so is the case with spaceflight, wireless calls, high-speed travel, and cures for numerous diseases. Such things are now just a part of everyday life. And dreams of once dreams of philosophers came true. However, not all of them. Despite modern civilization's achievements, their dream of a peaceful, safe, and secure world has yet to be realized. Today's world is still full of atrocities, injustice, and insecurity. However, it should not undermine the efforts of civilized nations to address this challenge and make our planet literally a better place to live. To this end, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky presented the peace formula, which called for comprehensive, just, and long-term peace in Ukraine, as well as global security. And the restoration of justice is an integral element of the peace formula. After all of Russia's atrocities in its aggression against Ukraine, we remain convinced that there can be no lasting peace until justice is established. When we talk about individual accountability for international crimes, we refer to the International Criminal Court. This court has already established itself as a well-known and reputable institution dedicated to serving justice and combating impunity. We are all witnessing countless examples of crimes that fall squarely within the jurisdiction of the ICC these days, as Ukraine faces the greatest aggression in Europe since World War II. We place a high value on the ICC, and we appreciate its involvement in investigating the situation in Ukraine for war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. Ukraine is one of the countries that voted in support of the court's statute at the Rome Conference back in 1998 and became a signatory thereto. We had to overcome certain domestic legal obstacles to proceed with the Rome Statute, but we did it as a reiteration of our commitment to ICC. Ukraine even amended its constitution in 2016 to allow for ratification of the Rome Statute, which will occur at the right moment, and we are working on it. But meanwhile, in response to Russian aggression, Ukraine filed 2 declarations in 2014 recognizing the court's ad hoc jurisdiction. We are also grateful to the 43 ICC member states that referred Russia's full-scale invasion to the court throughout March and April 2022. On our end, we are working closely with the ICC and have introduced a whole package of amendments to our national legislation, in particular the Criminal Procedure Code of Ukraine, to ensure the proper functioning of the ICC within the territory of Ukraine. Ukraine recently signed an agreement with the ICC to establish a country office, another step towards facilitating cooperation in investigating and prosecuting the aggressor's crimes. So it will be fair to say that Ukraine is de facto a member of the International Criminal Court, pending becoming a member de jure. Without a doubt, the ICC's decision to issue arrest warrants against Vladimir Putin and Maria Lvova-Belova for the war crime of unlawful deportation of over 19,000 Ukrainian children from occupied territories of Ukraine to the Russian Federation is a watershed moment. Not only to our soldiers on the front lines who witness Russian atrocities on a daily basis, not only to the many families who have lost loved ones, not only to those who have been forced to flee their homes as a result of the aggression, and not only to those who are living under the occupation regime. This decision sends a powerful message to the entire world that justice is unavoidable. We urge all 123 countries that are members of the International Criminal Court and have ratified the Rome Statute to comply with the court's demand that Putin and Maria Lvova-Belova be arrested. This, however, is insufficient. Ukraine calls on the International Criminal Court to set up its efforts and issue more arrest warrants for war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. The cities of Mariupol, Bucha, Hostomel, Borodyanka, and Izum. These names of once quiet and peaceful suburbs and towns are now known all over the world as a result of Russian atrocities committed there. Along with the ICC arrest warrant for Putin, he and other Russian political and military leaders must be held accountable for the crime of aggression, which is the root cause of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. And you all know the difficulties with the crime of aggression and the ICC jurisdiction in that regard. And this is why Ukraine has proposed to our international partners to establish the special tribunal for the crime of aggression against Ukraine. The goal, the purpose of establishing this tribunal is to close the existing gap in international law. I would like to reiterate that the establishment of the special tribunal will not impede the International Criminal Court's investigation on the situation in Ukraine. Finally, I would like to revert to the dreams of writers and philosophers of the near past. It is possible to establish a peaceful, safe, and secure world. Just as a cell phone, space shuttle, or the internet were unthinkable just 100 years ago. We must strive for it and go all in on it. We must work together to remove all impediments. And the case of the International Criminal Court proves that everything is possible. And Ukraine's victory over Russia's unjustified, genocidal, neocolonial war of aggression will be another proof of that. Thank you.
I thank you. I thank you for your statement, and I now invite the acting convener of the Coalition for the International Criminal Court, Ms. Melinda Reed, to take the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Today we gather to commemorate the moment 25 years ago when governments and organizations from around the world agreed on a simple idea, yet one that stands monumental in the history of humankind. The most serious crimes of concern to the international community as a whole must not go unpunished. 25 years ago, representatives from 161 governments and 235 organizations engaged in drafting the Rome Statute and establishing the International Criminal Court. Civil society played an instrumental role in this achievement even well before the Rome Conference. Under the umbrella of the Coalition for the ICC, civil society effectively campaigned for the adoption of the strongest treaty possible. In addition to achieving a historical codification of core international crimes, our priorities included ensuring the independence of the court and its prosecutor and judges, centering victims' rights, and meaningful inclusion of gendered crimes. After the Rome Statute was adopted and Senegal ratified in February 1999, the treaty entered into force far earlier than expected as a result of sustained civil society campaigning. But Excellencies, colleagues, and friends, what have we learned that will make the world a better place before our next commemoration? On the one hand, we have a fully functioning court with 20 situations and examinations in 17 countries worldwide. We have an emerging body of jurisprudence, one that reinforces national and regional accountability efforts. We have breathed life into the treaty that was drafted 25 years ago. At the same time, the Rome Statute system continues to suffer from perceptions of double standards in victims' access to justice, whether because of the court's resource constraints, gaps in universal application of the Rome Statute, threats against independence, or a lack of political will. It is critical that we recognize the seriousness of a hierarchical system of justice that deprioritizes actions for victims in certain places, and we must commit to both recognizing and confronting such inequity directly. We spoke with our members about their expectations for the court and the ASP. They seek a court that is universal and has the resources needed to genuinely do its work. They seek greater outreach to victims, and they seek greater recognition of the role civil society plays in supporting the delivery of justice. We must emphasize that civic space remains under threat. Our member organizations and other human rights defenders have faced reprisals for their work on behalf of human rights and in support of the ICC. The protection of human rights defenders requires more from the court and its Assembly of States parties. As we also commemorate the 25th anniversary of the UN Declaration on Human Rights Defenders this year, I wish to acknowledge and thank the dedication of our member organizations and human rights defenders, without whom justice would remain an even more distant goal. To move toward our collective goals as we approach a half-century, we must guarantee the court is victim and survivor-centered. This means full and effective participation, robust outreach and public information efforts, and adequate reparations and assistance. We must fundamentally revisit the financial resources that states parties provide to the court to ensure it can fully meet its mandate across all situations. This is the best protection against threats to the court's independence and legitimacy, and eases overly selective approaches to justice that raise perceptions of double standards. We must strengthen state cooperation. States parties have an obligation to cooperate with the court and to implement its decisions, including the execution of arrest warrants. More states parties should sign voluntary cooperation agreements to facilitate and enhance the work of the court. We must enhance diplomatic support. States should be united in defending the court against all kinds of political threats and sanctions aimed at undermining its independence. We must ensure the court's leaders are elected through fair, transparent, and merit-based elections with no tolerance for vote trading. And of course, we must keep expanding the court's reach and make it truly universal. We must treat the Rome Statute as a living instrument and encourage more states to ratify the statute and all of its amendments. The Rome Statute at 25 remains a beacon of hope, a last resort to justice for many victims around the world. A beacon must guide those imperiled towards safety, and in this case, justice, for those people and communities who are living through the worst atrocities known to humankind. The court is only as impactful as you, its states parties, and the broader international community allow it to be. We call on governments everywhere to do all they can to ensure the ICC and the broader system for justice it anchors can deliver fully on the promise made in Rome to end impunity for the sake of present and future generations. Thank you.
I thank you. We have now completed the list of speakers on our roundtable. I would like now to give the floor to the prosecutor of the court, Mr. Karim Kam, to give some concluding remarks. Mr. Prosecutor, you have the floor.
Madam President, elected officials of the court, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, a really important occasion, obviously, and when the various remarks were said, numerous different thoughts came to my mind, and I think perhaps it's good to start at the beginning. I thought it was quite appropriate, Madam President, that the first speaker from the ministerial was the Foreign Minister of Germany, and personally I'm always touched and indeed moved with Germany's willingness to look at its history full on in the face, not to look away at a genocide, the crimes against humanity during the Holocaust. And it's that willingness to do better, to confront hate, to insist on accountability that has built and helped Germany move to the country that it is. Now, you're all here, so you are supporters of this court. As the ambassador of Palestine said earlier, it is your court, and you have the fundamental responsibility to make sure it works. The former foreign minister, Lloyd Axworthy, said very clearly that it's important to have a court, and it must be a court that's worth having. We all need to do better. As we're speaking here, there are victims around the world that have had enough talk and they want to see action. It's not to diminish the critical work, the very important work that's been done over the last 25 years, but simply a realization that as we're here in New York, rightfully taking a moment to applaud the work of the past, we should look at the daunting mountain of impunity that must be conquered to give life to the promise of never again, to give life to the promise of victims that want to have a court that's worth its name. Now, it's only right, and I was really grateful that the minister from South Africa spoke, because this court would not have been created without the leadership of the Southern Hemisphere. It was acknowledged, of course, the role of N.R. Robinson and the critical role of Trinidad and Tobago. Senegal was the first country to ratify the Rome Statute, and South Africa has endured with great dignity and with great wisdom, with the leadership of the great Nelson Mandela, the awful crime of apartheid, the awful crime against humanity. And I think generally all of us, whether one has the honor to be South African or not, should sometimes pause when there's these different priorities to decide what would Mandela do. And I think if that is the lodestar, if that's one of the guides to help us make difficult decisions, we will do better together. Now, the law is not static, and I think Sierra Leone, for example, Ambassador Kanu that may be here, but others have tabled amendments in terms of the Rome Statute for slavery crimes. We've heard from a number of distinguished delegates, Liechtenstein, Germany, Switzerland, and others, discussion about amendments to the crime of aggression. These are your responsibilities to consider and do better. What I can say in terms of the court is we have not been static. There's been several references to the report of the independent expert reports. I know the registrar is here, the president is here, we have the vice president of the court and judges of the ICC. We've done our bit. We've restructured in the office significantly. The court-wide approach to improvement is ongoing. But it does come back to whether or not the ICC should be a fig leaf or whether or not it's going to be given the tools to do better. When I've been just in the last few weeks, I've been in Bangladesh, I've been in the DRC, I've been in Venezuela and Colombia. When one is in refugee camps, whether it's Kalma camp in the north of Darfur, or whether it's seeing the 1.2 million people in Cox's Bazar, people actually don't see a big difference between the United Nations or the ICC or the African Union or the EU. They see powerful people, powerful leaders, senior officials like everyone in this room that talk a lot, that promise a lot, and we're not delivering sufficiently across the board. And that's simply the truth. And it's something that goes beyond international criminal law. It goes down to the wider conception of justice. In Cox's Bazar, right now, people that up until March were having 3 meals a day, children, pregnant women, old and young, are having 2 meals a day because the resources given to them have been significantly cut. Now we have to find a way to make sure that we do better in terms of the allocation of resources, not to give less to some situations, but give more generally so that justice cannot be naked. Justice cannot be rendered impotent or stillborn at birth. And I think what we're trying to do, we can't hold the can ourselves in terms of very difficult choices of terms of prioritization and delivery, because we have 17 cases and we need support from the Assembly of State Parties to match the promises that were here at Rome. If one looks at the great figures that we saw on the screens, the in memoriam aspect, imagine their efforts and their hopes. Imagine the efforts and the hopes of victims that are extremely vulnerable, that have been violated in the most base and vile manners. They look to us, they look to you to make sure that justice isn't a soundbite and that occasions like this don't become the purpose of international institutions, that these events should force us to do better and be impatient, because it's not our comfort that's important. It is the rights of so many individuals that we really should feel an urgent imperative to do better. And I think there's a real danger at this moment that the fatigue of maintaining hope that victims have is going to dissipate. So this is really a critical moment, because if the ICC is not given the tools to do its job, in my view, it will undermine the whole international architecture because of the very point I raised. People don't see a difference between ICC or United Nations or international organizations. They see these structures that have been built for their protection, that are not changing their life sufficiently because they're in refugee camps in Darfur, in Bangladesh, in Palestine, in the DRC, in so many parts of the world. So this should be a moment of celebration. It should be a moment of gratitude for the work of civil society, of statesmen and stateswomen, of activists around the world over many years. But we should be the opposite of complacent. We need the tools to do the job. I think if you look at it by any metric, what the office that I have the honour of to lead is doing, the judges recently had a retreat dealing with also trying to be more effective. We have an excellent registrar, and the registrar's team are here. We need really to deliver. I had really the honour of, in the DRC, engaging with the men and women of the Trust Fund for Victims, and I have seen women that have been raped and who have been violated walking, literally walking on prosthetics that are given by the Trust Fund for Victims. So this one court is your court. But please do not just put the finger of responsibility on the elected officials of the court to do better. You need to give us the tools to do the job. At a moment when billions are being given in arms, when so much is being done in other areas, the money that the court is requesting is so modest. Sometimes one is embarrassed to even ask for it. The budget for my office was 49.5 million when I came in. It's now 54.5 million. That's the inflation aspect. This ASP that is in this great city of New York this December will be a test to each and every one of you, each and every one of your capitals, that now we have such profound and strong utterances from heads of government and heads of state and from foreign ministers and ministers of justice. Are we actually going to give the very modest resources to this court to do the job? Because I agree, and I think collectively we agree, the court has to do better. We have to deliver more. If we deliver more, we will fortify, we will entrench, we will consolidate the rules-based system and the credibility of the international architecture that must evolve to the needs of the time. I'm so glad that Palestine spoke and South Africa spoke, because the largest group of state parties are Africa. The GRULAC group is the second largest. This court needs more diversity. We need to include others. We do so not by being tone deaf to a new non-aligned movement that may be developing politically. We do so by delivering more and improving, and you are vital. In fact, you are the vital actor as states in moving this forward, so that we don't just count down the clock to the next anniversary that comes, but we deliver with that impatience, with that objectivity, with that determination, as if, God forbid, they were our biological parents, our biological children that are suffering, because they certainly are our brothers and sisters that are yearning for justice. And this court, this permanent court, whose 25th anniversary is being recorded here today, has been created to give them shelter. So please, let's make sure the roof is watertight. Thank you so much.
I thank you very much for your concluding remarks of our roundtable. We have had a very rich debate, and now we are going into something that many of you have referred to, which is concrete cooperation with the activities of the court. The last segment of this morning is indeed about agreements on cooperation and other pledges or announcements that you may wish to make. So we now turn to this segment on accords de coopération et annonces. Comme beaucoup d'entre vous le savent, la Cour ne pourrait s'acquitter de son mandat sans le soutien actif des États parties et d'autres parties prenantes. Les dénommés accords volontaires contribuent fortement à aider la Cour à mettre en œuvre son mandat. Nous assistons aujourd'hui à la conclusion de 2 accords volontaires. Son Excellence, la ministre française des Affaires étrangères, remettra au président de la Cour son instrument de ratification de l'accord relatif à l'exécution des peines qui entra ainsi en vigueur aujourd'hui, soit le 17 juillet 2023.
Monsieur le Président, je suis honorée de vous remettre l'instrument d'approbation de l'accord entre la France et la Cour pénale internationale sur l'exécution sur le territoire français des peines prononcées par la CPI. Je vous remercie ainsi que vos équipes pour la qualité des échanges qui ont facilité sa négociation. L'entrée en vigueur ce jour de cet accord est une marque supplémentaire du soutien de la France à la CPI, qui répond à une demande de justice universelle réclamée par les victimes d'exactions. Monsieur le Président, la coopération des États parties est indispensable pour que la CPI puisse faire aboutir toutes les phases de ces enquêtes et de ces procès, y compris au regard de l'exécution des peines des personnes condamnées. C'est une attente forte des victimes. Nous encourageons tous les États parties à conclure ce type d'accord avec la Cour. Je vous remercie.
Ladies and gentlemen, I take the opportunity to thank the French Republic for ensuring that entry into force of the agreement of the enforcement of sentences today. It is entirely fitting that 25 years after the adoption of the Rome Statute, France demonstrated its ongoing commitment to the ICC by joining the list of states willing to accept persons sentenced by the court. Today, France became the 14th state party with an agreement on the enforcement of sentences in force with the International Criminal Court. Like other forms of voluntary cooperation, the court cannot perform its enforcement functions without the assistance of states. The conclusion of cooperation agreements is crucial not only to enable the court to carry out its mandate in an efficient and equitable manner, but also as part of the broader context of the global fight against impunity. As we take stock today on how far we have come to a quarter of a century and on what the future holds, there is no doubt that voluntary cooperation by state parties is and will remain a vital component of consistent and sustainable support for the ICC. I thank the French Republic once more, and I look forward to our future cooperation on the basis of this important agreement. Thank you.
Et nous allons maintenant procéder à la conclusion du second accord volontaire. Cet accord sur la mise en liberté définitive est signé entre la Belgique et la Cour, représentée par le greffier pour cette occasion. Son Excellence, M. Karl Legati, représentant permanent adjoint, chargé d'affaires de la mission permanente de la Belgique auprès des Nations Unies, échangera avec le greffier l'accord signé.
Merci Madame la Présidente, Monsieur le greffier. Au nom de notre ministre des Affaires étrangères, Hadja Labib, qui malheureusement ne pouvait pas être ici aujourd'hui, j'aimerais prononcer la déclaration suivante. La Belgique est heureuse de pouvoir confirmer, en ce jour du 25e anniversaire de l'adoption du Statut de Rome, la signature d'un nouvel accord bilatéral de coopération renforcée avec le greffe de la Cour pénale internationale. Il s'agit du 8e accord de coopération renforcée que la Belgique conclut avec un organe de la Cour. Il porte sur la mise en liberté des personnes, c'est-à-dire l'accueil sur notre territoire des personnes libérées au terme de leur peine à la suite d'un acquittement ou à la suite de l'abandon des charges à leur encontre. La Belgique souhaiterait profiter de cette occasion pour insister une nouvelle fois sur l'importance fondamentale pour la Cour de voir le cadre de sa coopération avec les États renforcé par les accords bilatéraux. Cela a pour conséquence d'améliorer, d'accélérer et de réduire les coûts de la justice internationale. Il y a 25 ans, la communauté internationale a réussi à mettre sur pied une institution judiciaire pénale internationale unique et à vocation universelle. Nous nous devons aujourd'hui, plus que jamais, de la soutenir concrètement dans sa tâche, car la Cour n'est pas outillée pour fonctionner sans l'aide des États. Elle est dépendante de leur coopération. C'est une obligation inscrite dans le statut, mais c'est aussi un devoir plus large dans le cadre de notre lutte contre l'impunité des crimes les plus graves et dans notre combat pour que justice soit faite aux victimes de ces crimes. La Belgique est depuis toujours particulièrement sensible au sort accordé aux victimes de ces crimes atroces. Pour cette raison, elle a décidé de verser cette année une contribution volontaire additionnelle de 500 000 € au Fonds d'aide aux victimes. La Belgique soutient le travail unique de fonds consistant à accorder réparation aux victimes et à leurs familles, notamment par un soutien psychologique et matériel. Je vous remercie.
Madam President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Today I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to the Kingdom of Belgium for signing the Framework Agreement on final release. This is truly a testament to your country's unwavering commitment to the International Criminal Court and the cause of global justice, as well as a tangible way to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Rome Statute. Through this significant step, Belgium provides vital support for the court to be able to relocate released persons when they are unable to return to their state of residence, thereby recognizing and upholding their fundamental rights. The absence of such agreements would potentially leave these individuals in detention, posing an immense negative impact on the integrity of the court and the very foundation of the Rome Statute system. Belgium is only the second state party to conclude such a framework agreement governing the final release of persons, and I urge all states parties gathered here today to follow Belgium's example. The court relies on the cooperation of its states parties in order to effectively carry out its mandate. Let us all remember the common commitments envisioned 25 years ago by the drafters of the Rome Statute, and ensure that these commitments can effectively be fulfilled. In this regard, I am especially grateful for Belgium's strong support track record in responding positively to the court's request for cooperation. I thank you.
Encore une fois, je voudrais remercier à la Belgique et à la France de la conclusion de ces deux accords si importants pour les opérations de la Cour. Et maintenant, dans vraiment la dernière partie de la célébration qui nous réunit ce matin, je donne la parole à tout État qui souhaiterait faire une annonce ou prendre un engagement. Je donne la parole à la délégation de la Hongrie.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Today, as we celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Rome Statute, Hungary acknowledges the remarkable work the court has been providing as a leading actor in ending impunity while paying particular attention to the victims and survivors. Hungary has been supporting the work of the court since its establishment, and we are proud that the court is a Hungarian member, Judge Péter Kovács, since 2014. We are of the view that addressing the rights and needs of victims and survivors is essential for reconciliation and, as we heard in the first panel, establishing lasting and sustainable peace. In this context, I have the pleasure to announce that in 2023, as in previous years, Hungary will provide 10,000 euros for the ICC Trust Fund for Victims. Let me also announce that the Ferenc Madl Institute of Comparative Law and the Central European Academy will organize a conference to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the ICC in Budapest on the 4th and 5th of September that will also have a panel dedicated to the victims and survivors. I thank you.
Je vous remercie pour votre annonce. Est-ce que notre délégué souhaite-t-il prendre la parole à ce moment? Je ne vois personne de plus. Il n'y a pas. Alors, je vous remercie. Je remercie encore une fois l'Hongrie de votre annonce. Je vous remercie vivement toutes les déclarations qui ont été faites aujourd'hui. Avant de faire une pause pour le déjeuner et d'assister à la réunion ministérielle parallèle qui aura lieu à la salle de conférence numéro 3 sur le thème « La Cour pénale internationale et les crimes d'agression en défense de la Charte des Nations unies », je prie chacun d'entre vous de prendre place dans cette salle de conférence avant 3 heures, s'il vous plaît, de façon que nous puissions commencer notre premier débat d'experts à 15 heures précises. Nous avons vraiment une après-midi très chargée aussi, très intéressant. Alors, il faudra commencer vraiment à 15 heures précises. Alors, je vous souhaite un agréable déjeuner. Je vous invite à participer de cette réunion sur le thème de l'agression en défense de la Charte des Nations unies et nous nous rencontrons encore une fois à 3 heures dans cette salle. Je vous remercie à vous tous.